Hey, this is Seth at Music Teachers Muse. Tune in Fridays PST at midnight for new episodes. See you there. Hey, welcome back. So today we're getting into story mode. So I was thinking about topics for this season and happened to come across a receipt that I had for when I had the worst teaching gig I have ever had in my entire history as a teacher, period. Aside from when I was a martial arts teacher, that's a whole other story. The gig was rewarding, the way I was treated was not. However, let's jump into this. So I'm just going to go into vivid detail. The main thing to take away from this is one, it'll be entertaining, but also everything I'm about to tell you about this story is something you most certainly want to avoid. Because this person, who I will list off by name here in a minute, treated me less professionally than anyone ever has in my entire professional musical career. So we got to back up to early 2013. I had just moved back to Indiana the previous October because I couldn't deal with LA anymore, even though I was working at Guitar Center 5 days a week. My things just weren't going the way I wanted, and I had to get out because I was drinking a lot and not in a good headspace. So I went home to be with family and get my head cleared out. I was hired by TG Music in Goshen right away. Had an interview with them when I visited the previous time before I moved back. So I already had a steady teaching job. Wasn't real lucrative, but it was something to start with, you know. And then my friend Joe Feingold, what's up, brother Joe? And equally, actually, I don't consider myself his equal. He's a total badass guitarist. Makes me look like I can't play anything, but he's an Ibanez junkie as well. And he calls me up one day and says, "Hey man, there's this teaching gig that somebody recommended to me, but I don't feel like I'm qualified." Which was like, Joe is more qualified than I am by a long shot, but they apparently, from what I can remember, wanted somebody who had a music education, and Joe is either self-taught or just took lessons when he was younger. I don't know for sure. I think probably both. But Joe didn't have a music degree like I do, and I don't think he does still. Not that that matters. Joe is a fucking badass. Check out Joe Feingold, Feingold, on Facebook. Just or find him on YouTube. The dude shreds the frets practically fall off the guitar when he plays. And he's just the most humble, nicest, most genuine person on earth. Fucking love you, brother. But so he calls me up, and there's this guy in Granger, Indiana, which is right next to or in the same neighborhood as Notre Dame. And he's got a teaching gig at a piano studio that he wants me to take, but he also wants to start doing guitar. And he actually already had a guitarist teaching there. His name was Mike. I won't say his last name. Actually, a former student of Joe's, and that might be where Joe got the recommendation. But the guy called me up, or I called him. I forget which, but he's like, "Yeah, man, I heard you're in town and you came highly recommended. So come on in, let's do an interview." The guy's name is Chris Griveas. That's Griveas. He's a Greek dude, and I don't know anything about Greeks other than I've heard their reputation for being friendly is not exactly high. That's what I heard years ago. The only Greek guy I've ever known besides is George Papadopoulos, who I went to GIT with over a decade ago. What's up, brother George? Hope you still got that badass RG Prestige 3120. And I met Gus G, who played on one Ozzy Osbourne album, and he's the band leader for Firewind. He was awesome too. He's also from Greece. But, you know, not that I really know for sure. But this guy, if there was a page in the encyclopedia or the dictionary or on Wikipedia for Greek fucking asshole, Chris Griveas of Chris Griveas Piano Studio in Granger, Indiana, it'd be a brilliantly 3D picture with full attention to detail, because this dude deserved a plaque with diamonds around it. The receipt I have here is for the price that I paid for the rental on the room. You see, it's dated March 9th, 2013, almost exactly, how many years ago would that have been? 8. Today is March the 5th, 2021, for $265 March room rental. from March 1st to March 31st that year. So that was the amount I had to pay him just for the supposed privilege of using the room, even though I was an independent contractor, which I was at my other job that I had at TG also, but they didn't make you do that. Of course, they had multiple instruments, and it was technically a school of music, but an independent school. Next thing that should have given me a warning sign, which it actually was he interviewed me, looked at my credentials, looked at my degree, and was all excited about having an instructor who had been in Hollywood and gone to GIT and experienced the scene here. But yet he wouldn't just look up my online performances to see that I knew what I was doing. The son of a bitch literally had me drive back there, which was 30 miles one way, the next day with my guitar and a small practice amp to play for him in person because he preferred that. And so I was broke at the time. It felt like a good opportunity. So I went ahead and went with it and drove back there the very next day, but the asshole didn't buy me lunch, didn't give me any gas money, and felt completely justified in his reasoning for, well, I'd rather just see you play something in person. And the video that was on there, because I don't think I had my YouTube channel going then. If I did, there wasn't anything on it, but it was of me playing at the Whiskey the previous April, so it wasn't that old of a video for as far as whatever performances I had online that you could find at the time. But still, that says asshole right there. He actually tried to get me to quit my current job that I had at TG in Goshen that I've been working at since the previous October. So I'd already built up however many students and how much money I was making there for 5 months or in that neighborhood somewhere, and would always complain to me about the money I was making there. And it gets deeper into the story, but he came up with some sort of figure that with what they're charging and then what they're paying you, it's like you're paying rent there, but that money didn't come out of my pocket. Because when you're in a music store environment or a school, they always charge your client this much, you get a certain share of that. So that was his justification for acting like I was paying them rent. So they were charging $36 an hour at the time that I believe for an hour, and they're giving me 22 of it. So like, you're paying them $14 an hour rent. I said, dude, I don't give a shit. I make money there. The guy couldn't do basic math. So if you add up what I paid for rent on the place, 265 times 2, that's 400. That's 300, or I'm sorry. That's over $500. I'm terrible at math in my head. It's like $530 total or something, but it's not a small amount of money, especially for at the time when I was essentially broke. That was a lot of money for me. The reason why, or a big reason why, he said that they were only to get me that money, because I remember actually giving him the cash when I paid him this amount. He's like, 4 students already, man. He's all excited. I remember thinking, I'm glad you're excited, because I sure as hell wasn't. But he also had this sign outside, because it was in a little shopping plaza where it was at. So if you didn't know exactly where it was difficult to find. So he had to pay rent, or he paid to use this sign to reserve it so nobody else in the plaza could advertise on it for whatever length of time. But it was winter in Indiana, and the snow kept coming down and covering it up. So that was his excuse. He didn't bother to go and clean it off or have somebody do it. So he's like, well, if the snow covers it up and nobody can see it, there's no point in me using it. So he wasn't working his ass off to get me students, but yet asking me to leave 6 days a week open to teach there. I mean, give me a break. Which, as I found out and knew before then, but I was admittedly not desperate, but trying to find as much work as I could get, so I took it. But you never start out with 6 days a week at any teaching gig like this. It's one day. They try to fill that up, and then they give you another one, or you maybe have 2, depending on how many teachers are there, how many students they have to give you. There's too many variables, but that's how that went down. So by this time, I've paid at least $300 or $400 on room rent, and I've got 4 students, which didn't even cover 1 month of the room rent that I was paying. The next part of the story is they didn't have a cancellation policy here, which, so one of the last couple of days I was there, one of the students bailed on me 5 minutes before the lesson was supposed to occur. So literally, I'm sitting there waiting. I've got however many students I have that day, which was only literally a couple. And they call and say, we're sorry, we're not going to make it today. Keep in mind, it takes me 45 minutes to drive there. I'm driving a huge Chevy 1500 Silverado pickup that gets maybe 15 miles a gallon on a good day, even after it's been all tuned up and everything. And so, a good chunk of my expense was gas money, even at Indiana prices back then. And he's like, well, dude, you got to give him a makeup lesson. I'm like, no, I don't. They canceled 5 minutes before the lesson. They're out that money. They screwed me out of my time and my money. I'm not giving them a makeup lesson. He's like, well, you have to do that. I'm like, what kind of policy do you have? Because these are rich people, I've known some in LA. I've met some of the nicest rich people I've ever known. They treat me like gold. They're beautiful people. Not in Granger, Indiana, at least not the ones I dealt with. They're not. Because that's where Notre Dame is at. And actually one of the moms who was my longest time client in LA, she went to Notre Dame. Michelle Turk. Sweet, wonderful lady. But I did just put it this way. I didn't get a good vibe of the citizens of that area because of this experience. You can probably tell. Students were already getting a discount on the lessons to begin with, which was another point of contention because at the time it was $20.50 for a half-hour lesson, and then I was giving them an hour lesson for $30, which is crap, really, because it shouldn't be that way. If you want an hour lesson, it should cost you $41, right? I mean, it's twice the amount of time, should be twice the amount of charge. He didn't do it that way, and I don't think he told me what, he gave me the minimum to set my half-hour lessons at, but if you haven't figured out already, he was honest about this. He put up with a lot of shit, and he kissed every one of their asses. I'm sure most of them had welts on their ass. He kissed them so hard. And admittedly, he had lots of students, and he kept that place open for a long time. I don't know if he's still in business, and if he is, please drive by and throw a flaming bag of shit with a brick attached through the window and say, this is for Seth. I'd really appreciate that. Do it discreetly. I mean, I don't want to anybody get arrested, but if I was able to see that in the news, I would, oh man, I'd have a small party just for myself watching that. But the final straw was this. I've talked about difficult parents. This lady took I won't say it because I know my mother watches these videos. Hey, Mom. And she don't like me throwing the F-bomb around anyway, but calling this lady the C word is an extraordinarily small, microscopic, amoeba-sized understatement. So let me tell you why. So I get this student. He's 8 years old. They want an hour lesson. So they come and do the lesson. The kid's great. For an 8-year-old, he paid attention and did great the whole time. But after the lesson, I'm talking to the lady, and she doesn't want to do lessons every week. And they want every other week. And actually, the night before, I had just had a gig in Fort Wayne, which was an hour from where I lived. So I played till 2 in the morning, whatever it was, drove an hour home, got up, showered, was there by whatever time the next Saturday morning, which is 45 minutes in the other direction. So I was pretty much a zombie. But I mentioned to her, I said, hey, if we can keep it as consistent as possible, I'd really appreciate that because it takes me almost an hour to drive here. Also, she had mentioned that her husband, who was paying for the lessons, told me my price was too high. So, so now I'm already being insulted by saying that, we talked about that, what you charge for your lessons. It's like, That's bullshit. They shouldn't be able to negotiate. This is what it costs. If you want it, that's what it's going to cost. So if that's the case, then you don't get lessons. But but this guy, I mean, he if he left welts on his other clients' asses, there was like POWs didn't have many welts on them as this woman's ass did after he kissed it for the 7 years at the time she'd been his client, I'm sure. She wanted a different time of day every other week. Could not agree that it was, say, noon to 1 on a Saturday every other week. Because even when you do agree to every other week, you have a gap in your schedule where you can't have one student in that time slot every week. You have 2 weeks of the month where it can't be filled. So if you have somebody else who wants every week, you can't give it to them. So in times of COVID, I've had to adapt to that because I've got a couple students who do it that way. You take what you can get. But in a store or a school environment, it's really not something that most people tolerate, and for understandable reasons. It's very self-explanatory. So, and she also complained to Chris after I was gone, and she's like, why is your instructor telling me about what his commute is like? I don't need to hear all that. It's like, because I'm a human being and I'm trying to work with you, which you're making impossible. I told him, I said, well, dude, you can kiss her ass if you want to. I ain't putting up with that. She's already insulted me by telling me I'm not worth the rate that I'm charging. She wants every other week, and she won't agree to a specific time every other week. And she complains that I was just trying to be nice and say, hey, can we make it more consistent because it's not easy for me to get here. So just literally, the next thing he says is, well, when you come into the store next time, can we talk? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Well, we all know we need to talk, whether you're in a relationship or anything like that. Usually it's not. The last student was going to be gone for whatever time, like a week or two. So I was telling him, hey, just let me know when you come back. You got my number or whatever. And Chris comes into the room. He's like, don't worry about it. Just contact me when you get back. I'll take care of it. So I knew something was up. So we get done. I pack up my guitar, whatever I had with me at the time. Calls me into the office. And I'm going to be as vivid as possible, but if I wasn't afraid of jail time and there wasn't cameras in that office, they'd be getting a fresh paint job. And they'd also had to have the sanitation department come in because I would have scared this dude so bad he would have pissed and shit himself all over. It is still that way here, but I had just come from LA where everybody wants you to do everything for free when it costs a fortune to live here. Don, nice guy. I don't remember much about Don. I think I met him one time. But Don had a doctorate in piano. And he didn't put up with their shit either. But they wouldn't pay him $40 an hour for a piano lesson with a doctorate. I don't know how long he lasted there, but I was obviously in the same vein as Don. Not that I have a doctorate in music, but I had the same attitude. And good for Don. Piss on those people. And these are rich people who have money to pay. So it's not like they're hurting for anything. They drive I've never seen a Rolls Royce in Indiana, but I'm sure they were driving BMWs and Mercedes and Cadillac Escalades and shit like that. So, they are stingy with their money, but they have it pretty damn good. These are doctors and lawyers and people like that. I mean, it's Notre Dame. Last I knew it cost $50,000 a year or more to attend that place. He hands me $42, which was at least less than half of the money I was supposed to get for the next month, because he was going to hold on to the money that they had already paid for the remainder of the month. I couldn't tell you what exact day of the month this occurred on. But because of that one student or a couple who had bailed 5 minutes before the lesson, it's like, I'm going to keep this and pay Mike, the other teacher there, for taking these students on because we still owe them a makeup lesson. I kept my cool. I went out into the parking lot and he was just literally like, he wished me the best, this, that, and the other. I mean, I will say that at least he had the spine enough to say this to my face. Because you could imagine I have a long fuse, and I have to because of my teaching job. But if you've ever seen me violently pissed off, it's not pretty. It's very, very, it's not a side of myself I like to come out, but when it only does when it's absolutely necessary. As I said, I would have kicked the living hell out of him if I wasn't afraid of jail time and there wasn't cameras in the office. But I called my buddy Joe. I'm like, I just got fired from the store. He gave me $42. It was supposed to be like $130. He's like, what? I'm so sorry, dude. This, that, and the other. So I called him up later that night. This is like 10 p.m. or something. Left him a couple messages. And I told him flat out. I said, dude, I don't give a flying fuck what your rationale is. You owe me the rest of that money. It was like 90 some dollars. And because at the time that was a lot of money for me. And he had also tried to work out a thing where I could do like a 6-month payment plan to make the rent a little bit easier on me. It'd be the same amount, but I pay less every month or something. Because he obviously wasn't giving me enough students to even cover that, much less make any profit. I actually made $0 the entire time I worked there. Actually, I lost money. I couldn't tell you what the amount has been too long ago. But I called him up. I said, dude, that's on you. That's your business practice. I never agreed to this no cancellation. We have to give them makeup lessons bullshit. And you owe me that money. So I don't want a check. I want a money order in case you put a stop payment on it. Which he did send me a check. But I cashed it right away just to make sure it didn't bounce or it wasn't put a stop payment on. But this is how big, he was a small, thin dude, but this is how big of a prick with ears he is. I'm sure he still is one. I wouldn't doubt it. If I saw him again, I'd still tell him to kiss my ass. I would be nice about it. I really hope I don't, because it's a waste of breath. Or allowing him to share the same breathing space as anyone with a decent soul is a crime against humanity. But the son of a bitch literally said, Do I have to pay for the stamp too, because this is cutting into my profits? Yeah, he literally asked if he could take the expense of the stamp out of the amount that he was going to give me, that he actually did owe me. I said, are you seriously kidding me right now? He said, no, this is cutting into my profits. I'm like, dude, it's 32 cents or something of that nature at the time. It was less than 40 cents, I can tell you that much. And that was that. I never ever set foot into the place again. And not like, why would I? And the one time, because I don't generally badmouth anybody online by name or anything like that, but for obvious reasons, if the guy is still in business, which I don't think he is. Again, his name is Chris Griveas, Griveas. He had a C. Griveas piano studio in Granger, Indiana. If it's still there, I'd be really surprised. Because I did hear that some years later, Mike, the other guy who taught there, had some kind of a nasty falling out. And I think from what I heard from my friend Joe, who recommended me for the job in the first place, he threatened Mike or something bad went down. But I don't know the details, so that's as far as I'm going to go with that. But the guy's just a real piece of shit. And that is literally the most disrespected I have ever been in my professional career when it came to any job or any gig as far as music related or anything else I've ever done. And I'm sure you're not super surprised, because it's hard to put much of anything past people these days. But the moral generally is anything that I listed off that they're asking you to do, like he did me, like you have to pay for the room rent, but there's not enough students for you to cover it. They want you to sacrifice 6 days a week so they can fill it up, because they're so confident they can get you that much work. No cancellation policy. We have to give them makeup lessons. We've got people wanting different times of the week every week. They only want to do every other week. They're going to complain that your price is too high. Any of that shit, run. Don't bother with it. Even if you need to work really bad, I'd rather not work than disrespect myself that way. So, moral of this story is, if you ever see that guy, tell him fuck you for me. And just respect yourself and don't put up with that shit. So thanks for tuning in and watching. Please hit the bell for new videos. Subscribe, like, share. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Check out our sponsors in the description below. And we will see you next week.